force, and it saved me. I never imagined I'd be writing something like this. For years, I scrolled through Reddit stories late at night, reading about betrayals, secret affairs, and marriages that imploded without warning. I always felt a strange mix of sympathy and distance. Those stories belonged to other people, other lives, other mistakes. My marriage wasn't like that. At least, that's what I believed. My wife, I'll call her Rachel, and I were together for 6 years, married for 4. We met in our mid-20s when everything still felt possible and uncomplicated. We grew up together in many ways. We built routines, traditions, and a quiet sense of trust that I thought was unbreakable. We weren't one of those couples who constantly posted about how perfect everything was. We were private, comfortable, stable. We argued sometimes, sure, but nothing that felt dangerous. Our fights ended in conversations, not slammed doors. We laughed more than we fought. We planned our future casually, assuming it would simply unfold the way it always had. That's why I didn't recognize the warning signs at first. About 6 months before everything fell apart, something began to change. Not in a dramatic movie scene way. No shouting, no sudden coldness, just a slow, creeping sense that something wasn't lining up anymore. It started with her phone. Rachel began carrying it everywhere. At first, I didn't think much of it. People get attached to their phones. Work gets busy. Life happens. But it became constant. She took it to the bathroom, to the kitchen, to the bedroom just to grab a sweater. Before that, she used to leave it lying around without a second thought. I joked about it one evening, half smiling. I asked if she was running some kind of secret operation. She laughed and said work had been hectic lately. I believed her. Then she put a password on her phone. That alone shouldn't have mattered, but it did. She'd never used one before. We'd always been open like that. When I asked why, she mentioned hackers and security. Her tone was casual, but something about it felt rehearsed. I didn't push. I didn't want to be controlling. I didn't want to be paranoid. I told myself I was overthinking it. Then the phone calls started. Calls she'd step away to take. Calls she'd lower her voice for. Calls that ended abruptly when I entered the room. If I asked who it was, the answer was always the same. Someone from work. Around the same time, she started keeping her phone face down. One night at dinner, I reached across the table for a napkin and she slid her phone away so quickly it startled me. The movement was instinctive, defensive. She noticed my look and brushed it off like nothing had happened. It should have been nothing, but it wasn't. The bigger issue was the distance. Rachel became harder to reach emotionally. Conversations that once flowed easily started feeling forced. When I talked about future plans, vacations, saving for a new car, even our next anniversary, she grew vague. We'll see, she'd say, and then redirect the conversation to something trivial. It felt like she was slowly stepping out of the life we'd built together, one foot at a time. The moment everything clicked happened on an ordinary weekday evening. She told me she was meeting a friend for coffee after work. That wasn't unusual. But by coincidence, I was already in that part of town running errands. I thought it would be nice to surprise her. Something small, something thoughtful. When I arrived, she wasn't inside the cafe. She was outside, pacing back and forth, phone pressed tightly to her ear. Her posture was tense. Her voice was low, serious. I stayed in my car without really deciding to. I didn't want to spy, but I couldn't help overhearing pieces of the conversation. It's almost ready. We'll be starting over soon. My chest tightened. That didn't sound like work. It didn't sound like casual conversation. It sounded like planning. When she came home that night, she told me a completely different story about the coffee meetup. It was detailed, convincing, too convincing. That's when I realized she'd rehearsed it. A few days later, she brought up finances. Out of nowhere, she suggested we organize all our account information, passwords, and important documents in one place. She framed it as responsible planning, something couples should do in case of emergencies. On the surface, it made sense, but the timing felt wrong. The way she spoke felt polished, like she'd practiced saying it. I agreed verbally, but inside, something broke. My instincts were screaming that this wasn't about emergencies. When she brought it up again a few days later, I finally asked if something was wrong. She denied it immediately. Too fast. Too clean. That night, while she was at work, I logged into our joint account. At first glance, everything looked normal. Then I noticed a pattern. Small withdrawals, consistent, quiet, not tied to bills or shared expenses, not large enough to raise alarms, but enough to notice if you were paying attention. I didn't confront her, not yet. Instead, I called someone I trusted, an old college friend who had become a lawyer. I explained everything, carefully, trying not to sound unhinged. After listening, he paused and said something that changed the trajectory of my life. "I'm not saying she's planning something," he said. "But if she is, this is the moment when you protect yourself. Once papers are filed, your options shrink fast." I hung up feeling sick. Preparing to protect my assets felt like a betrayal. This wasn't just money. This was our life, our home, our shared history. But waiting for certainty meant risking everything. So I acted. Quietly, carefully, legally. With shaking hands, I moved my assets into an irrevocable trust under my mother's name. Savings, investments, the house, everything. The transfers were done weeks before any legal action was taken. I left enough money in our joint account to maintain normalcy. Rachel didn't notice. She kissed me that night and asked if I wanted to watch a movie. I sat beside her on the couch, smiling on the outside, feeling hollow on the inside. For the next 2 weeks, things felt strangely calm. She was warmer, more affectionate, almost relieved. For a moment, I questioned myself. Maybe I'd imagined everything. Maybe stress had distorted my perception. Then one night, she turned off the television, sat beside me, and said she thought we should get divorced. Her voice wasn't emotional. It was controlled, prepared. She talked about needing space, about losing herself, about sacrifices she'd made. Then she said something that revealed everything. I deserve more. The divorce papers arrived days later. They weren't messy or emotional. They were aggressive, strategic. She wanted half the house, my savings, spousal support, and assets that made no sense given her income. It was obvious someone was advising her. Mediation day came quickly. She walked in confident. Her lawyer came armed with demands. Then my lawyer slid the trust documents across the table. The room went silent. The dates, the notarized signatures, the timing. All of it made the situation undeniable. Her lawyer froze, Rachel's face flushed with rage. "You planned this," she said. I didn't respond. After that, she unraveled. She called nonstop, apologized, screamed, cried. She told friends the divorce was a test, then a misunderstanding, then my fault. That story collapsed when messages surfaced showing she'd been planning everything with another man who had encouraged her to take me for everything. Once the money was gone, that man disappeared. She didn't. The divorce finalized quietly. I kept my home, my savings, my peace. Now the house feels like mine again. No suspicion, no manipulation, no second guessing every interaction. Just quiet. And for the first time in a long time, that quiet feels like freedom.